ready for this?
Hey, the CEO of YouTube is resigning on the very same day, virtually, that we're getting a bunch of subpoenas from Congress on censorship. Sometimes people, I see this in a comment field sometimes, where people are like, hey, I just typed this thing in it and YouTube deleted it. Could they be related?
I'm told there are going to be 4 questioners.
So that's a 4. Reversal.
But I'm not going to do...
He's not. But under reversal, he is.
We'll look at all of that and more.
But I'm not going to do 10 questions from each questioner.
This is the important bit. He's not going to do 10 questions from each questioner. So, under reversal, he is 10-4.
As Redacted starts right now on this Friday.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted that President Zelensky is here in the United Kingdom today. It is a testament to the unbreakable friendship between our two countries, and I'm proud that we are expanding the training for Ukrainian forces to include jet pilots and Marines and ensure that Ukraine has a military able to defend its interests today and into the future.
Well, many of you probably know the history of the mercenaries for hire by the name of Blackwater, the hired guns the U.S. government paid to do its dirty work in Iraq and other hotspots around the world. They were responsible for some horrible things like the Nisour Square massacre in Baghdad, where Blackwater shot and killed 17 civilians. Many of us were wondering, how are they able to operate unfettered without laws? Many of us wondered if Blackwater is operating today, and if so, are they operating in Ukraine? Well, Redacted News can confirm that they are, in fact, operating in Ukraine, but not in the way that we thought. Redacted's own Dan Cohen has the story. Dan, welcome to the show. Good to see you. So, not in the way that we thought. Can you give us some context here?
Yeah, Clayton. So, U.S. government contracts show that the Pentagon actually contracted Academy Training Center, which is part of the company formerly known as Blackwater, which underwent a series of rebrands following the Nisour Square massacre and all of the fallout from that. They contracted Blackwater, essentially the Academy Training Center, for $3.2 million to do a media literacy training series in Ukraine. Now, what exactly does that mean? It's not clear, but
this matters going forward. We're in a live exercise here.
Only 7. 101 and 7.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
cutting the time from Leeds to Manchester from 55 minutes to 33 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Big Brother Watch recently released a report into unaccountable government bodies such as the Counter-Disinformation Unit, the Rapid Response Unit and the British Army's 77th Brigade.
Today, I want to spend a few minutes talking to you about considerations for the tactical military exploitation of social media.
We're seeing huge swathes of public money being spent recording political dissent on social media under the guise of tackling misinformation.
Monitoring such social media can give you early warning and indicators of activity that may be about to develop in your sector. It assists with threat assessments, collateral damage assessments and potentially battlefield damage assessments. One only has to look that in any news bulletin there is mobile phone footage, whether it be of the Kerala floods, the forest fires in Athens or of chemical weapon strikes in Syria.
Politicians, including myself, the Leader of the Opposition, academics, activists and journalists and even members of public have been subjected to monitoring by Whitehall officials.
Some of you may have seen the Defence Minister's tweet the other day after her meeting with the High Commissioner from Great Britain. A successful meeting, tweeted as much by the Defence Minister. However, within moments, there were comments that, shall we say, were unfair, unkind and unpleasant. However, they're just comments, sticks and stones, we've all heard the phrase.
You know, who did Blackwater, who did Academy teach so-called media literacy to in Ukraine? I mean, let's be clear, media literacy, that sounds like a nice euphemism for, you know, wartime military psychological operations. I think it's safe to assume it's something along those lines, rather than, you know, teaching them how to read the New York Times and the Washington Post every day, how to read the New York Times and the Washington Post every day, how to read the New York Times and the Washington Post every day, how to read the New York Times and the Washington Post every day.
10-4.
I like to be a man of my word.
And what happened within 24 hours? Oh boy! Boom, shake the room.
Yeah. This is at the same time as we're waiting for the reporting of the Pitchford inquiry into questionable state surveillance on campaigns like the Stephen Lawrence campaign. So can the Prime Minister tell us how much public money is spent on these units?
It's also worth bearing in mind language and culture. Where are you going to find the individuals that have the correct language skills and cultural awareness to be able to convincingly and effectively engage in conversation with target audience? This is something that 77 Brigade is specifically considered for. I would suggest they're likely to be found in other cases in theatre and not necessarily at reachback. But potentially you'll make use of contractors or locally employed civilians. Potentially you'll make use of contractors or locally employed civilians. Potentially you'll make use of contractors or locally employed civilians. However, one has to understand the security implications of doing so, and also the nuance of language. As we all know, English is a language with fewer words but many meanings.
And whether he thinks it's a justifiable thing to do in our democracy to spend public money in this manner, and could you also update the House on the progress of the Pitchford inquiry?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I have to get back to the Honourable Lady on the Pitchford inquiry and indeed to give her an exact figure. But in general, I think certainly I on this side of the House believe very strongly in free speech and will make sure that we continue to protect it wherever we can. In free speech, 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 and we'll make sure that we continue to protect it wherever we can.
But we're going to be moving over to Rumble for our next couple of stories, because these next stories are likely not going to be very favorable to YouTube, specifically talking about the resignation of the CEO of YouTube. So anyway, we're going to be moving over to Rumble for that story in just a moment. So please come on over. Our Rumble URL is rumble.com/redacted. The stream will continue over on Rumble, censorship free. So come on over to Rumble. And sometimes people wonder, like, do we censor comments? No, the answer is no, we don't. Sometimes people, I see this in a comment field sometimes, where people are like, hey, I just typed this thing in it and YouTube deleted it. Yeah, that's what happens. So, like, you know, I don't know what they're doing. Does Rumble do that? I don't think so. Do we know if Rumble does that too yet? Or
No, Rumble does not do anything.